Countries all over the world suffer from conflict, which can cause or lead to food shortage and widespread food insecurity. Conflict often leaves a country stripped of resources and of funds to put things right.
Wars in many developing countries today pose the main threat to long-term food security and economic progress. Conflict leads to the destruction of many vital resources and infrastructure, uses up all of the country's funds and military as opposed to paying for necessities, and ultimately leaves the country in a state of political despair, unrest, and uncertainty.
So here we have a news report about the food security situation in Iraq.
In Iraq, conflict, poor recent wheat and barley crops, and a large number of internally displaced people are making it difficult for many families to access the food they need. Poor weather conditions in 2009 brought the smallest crop ever harvested. Nearly 30 years of economic decline and conflict have had severe humanitarian consequences in Iraq. In particular, education and health services have been severely affected, hitting hard women, children, the elderly, and the chronically ill. Iraq is now at a crossroads to political stability and socio-economic recovery. Although the food security situation in Iraq is improving, there are still 930,000 people in need of food assistance and an additional 6.4 million who are extremely vulnerable.
The Philippines is known as a tropical rainforest country. It has severe localized food insecurity caused by past tropical storms, and localized conflict affects it. There are numerous tropical storms, and in particular, Capsana affected 2 million people in the main rice-producing area in 2009. Since this attack, people have been recovering, but aid is still needed. Rice production throughout 2010 is likely to be affected, although $143.7 million have been sent to people to help. This lack of food will cause more hunger for this country. There are two climates of the Philippines. Firstly, the period from June to October when it rains heavily, and December through to May brings humidity. There are many weather problems, but they still manage to produce vegetables. Food distribution is affected by the weather, and even though we can't change the weather, we can help the Philippines by providing them with the technology to prevent weather damage to their crops. Now we will have a specialist talking about the conflict in Sri Lanka.
A 25-year civil war with separatist rebels, mainly in the north and the east, ended in May 2009. Livelihoods and food security were affected in those areas, and many people fled the fighting. Farming has been greatly disrupted. The lingering effects of the war are dissipating. Food production and local markets are being resurrected in the affected areas. A survey in 2007 found that 4% of children aged fewer than 5 were severely stunted. Agencies have requested funding of approximately $270 million. Heavy unseasonal rainfall over much of Sri Lanka, including the conflict-affected areas, has destroyed much of the main Maha rice harvest, which when combined with the global price rises and food shortages, may indicate problems for the future. High levels of undernourishment prevail, especially in rural areas and those regions in the north and east affected by more than 25 years of conflict.
Yemen is also another affected area of localized food insecurity. Escalating conflict in the northern areas of Sada and Amman has affected the food security situation there. The number of IDPs has doubled since 2009. Yemen is the poorest and least developed countries in Arabia, with high unemployment, rapid population growth, and political turmoil. Yemen is a new entry in the list, with the food security situation in the north having taken a turn for the worse. The response plan for Yemen 2010 said structural factors had limited agricultural growth and the country had become a net food importer, bringing in 90% of wheat and 100% of rice. An estimated 48% of households are food insecure. According to the response plan, half of all children were chronically malnourished. The response plan 2010, issued in November 2009, appealed for $177.4 million.
What is important to prevent conflict is the peaceful meeting between neighboring countries at regular intervals to discuss issues as they arise, before they become out of hand and escalate into widespread conflict. Once conflict arises, however, the key factor in this is to limit its impact on food production and exportation, as this is a very major issue that can affect countries worldwide. Conflicts must be addressed and attempted to be solved before so much damage is wreaked that will take years to rectify. We need to formulate plans that ensure food security, even if and when a conflict inevitably does ensue. Governments must strengthen the resilience of food systems prior to crises erupting, and factor resilience into responses.
For example, planting crops in a variety of different areas and on a variety of types of land can increase the potential of harvesting, even in unfavorable conditions. Agricultural programs must choose paths that foster cooperation among communities or rival groups and avoid negative competition leading to conflict. Ultimately, the only way in which we can stop this is by creating foolproof preparation plans which can be immediately put into action in all countries, so that if conflict ensues, harvest can still be made in any conditions. And, furthermore, to encourage governments to settle their differences and make peace with one another. As once the stem of everything, the conflict is ended, the country can begin to sustain growth and development to prevent conflict from recommencing, and work towards feeding the hungry and the deprived.
This production was brought to you by
Sarah,
Ellen,